What does it mean to be brat? And what happens when the two worlds of popular culture and American politics collide? Hi, my name is RJ Ruacho, and today we'll be talking about Charli XCX's album Brat, Kamala Harris, and what happens when pop culture becomes political currency for American politics. Released on June 7th, 2024, Charli XCX's sixth studio album Brat released as a chaotic, sharp, and self-aware album that pushed the boundaries of pop music while also adopting internet-age themes of irony, hyperrealism, and subversive glamour. Styled in all lower cases with jarring green visuals, the eye-catching simplicity of Brat quickly took the internet by storm and solidified it as a cultural artifact, not just as an album, but as a statement piece as well. Blending elements of experimental electronic music, rave culture, and confessional lyricism, Charli tapped into the spirit of Gen Z, a generation raised on overstimulation and an obsession with self-branding. Sparking viral discourse across TikTok, fashion, and queer online spaces, Brat was embraced both as chaotic club fuel as well as high-valued art due to the way that it reflects the human experience. With tracks that speak to fame, insecurity, and emotional chaos, Brat isn't just an album, it's an unapologetic celebration of life that accepts the beauty in being just a little bit messy. And it is through this perspective on life that ultimately solidifies Charli's role as a fearless voice within modern pop, as well as igniting what would eventually be coined as Brat Summer, a cultural movement that promotes hot confidence, emotional honesty, and reckless glamour. Brat Summer quickly spilled beyond Charli XCX's fan base and into mainstream pop, becoming a collective shift and a new sort of vibe that carried the public sentiment for the rest of the summer. With this shift, social feeds blew up with Brat-inspired edits, memes, aesthetics, especially with the album's signature green, which ended up becoming an unofficial, later official visual code. As Brat Summer continued to make waves across social media, the term brat in itself began to undergo some redefining, as people's attitudes in videos that we're creating were mixing chaotic energy with vulnerable admissions, turning personal messiness into performance art. And this sentiment was expressed in many different ways. For example, fashion, it mirrored the moment with raw, experimental looks, a strapless bra, smudged eyeliner, thrifted metallics, and an overall intentionally undone look. Brat even found itself having major influence on other music artists' work, as they wanted to echo the punchy, synth-heavy, and emotional rawness that Charli was able to possess when making the album, underscoring its influence beyond Charli's immediate fanbase. In fact, artists really gave Charli her flowers for the influence that they have had on their personal music. For example, Lorde, a collaborator on the extended version of the Brat album, singing in the remix of the song Girl So Confusing, states that, "Brat coming out really gave me a kick in a lot of ways. It forced me to further define what I was doing because Charli had so masterfully defined everything about Brat, and I knew that what I was doing was very distinct to that." Lorde's comment highlights how Brat didn't just set a sonic trend, it actually raised the bar for creative intentionality and aesthetic clarity. For other artists, Brat's influence on them was a little bit more apparent than Lorde's. For example, 360.5 Remix adopted the track's original sleek, confrontational style, but added some humor to it, while Robin and Young Lean's remix infused 360 with both nostalgic synth pop and an avant-garde coolness. And it is through Charli's genuine expression of herself through her music that Brat really began to challenge other artists to become sharper, louder, and more unapologetically themselves so that they can have a deeper connection to both their music and their fanbase. Look, I know some of y'all are thinking, cool, she had a really successful album, but RJ, how the HE double hockey sticks does an album about being hot and sometimes a little bit messy have to tie in with Kamala Harris. And in order to explain that, we're actually going to have to go back to the beginning, which is also halfway through the election, when Joe Biden first withdraws from the race and hands the ticket to Kamala Harris to finish off the race and potentially become the next US president. After receiving criticism for his age, as well as a disastrous performance in the first presidential debate between him and now President Donald Trump, On July 21st, 2024, Joe Biden officially decided to drop out of the race and handed the ticket to Kamala Harris. And this proved to give the Democratic Party the kick in the butt that they truly needed, as Kamala was met with unprecedented grassroots enthusiasm. On the first day after the announcement of her presidential campaign, she raised over $81 million, setting the highest record for any amount of money that a presidential candidate was able to raise in a single day. As the left started to see the amount of money that she was able to raise in her first day, public sentiment on the left side of the aisle was this. As they now felt like they were finally back in the race and that there was a chance that they might be able to pull out and win. And it is in these first days of Kamala's endorsement where Charli XCX would post the infamous tweet, "Kamala is brat," bringing massive amounts of public excitement towards the new candidate, as well as giving Kamala Harris her brand identity in that exact moment. 316. Once seeing the waves of memes and online discourse that arose from Charli's tweet, Harris's campaign decided to fully lean into the brat of it all, changing their Twitter banner to the iconic brat green and aligning the new candidate with the album's chaotic and confident tone. And it would be in this single aesthetic shift that would cause a flurry of digital activity that reached to far corners of the internet, whether it was political commentators or stan Twitter. Everybody knew that Kamala is now brat. And this was met with a lot of different public sentiment. While some people praised the candidate for having a Gen Z outreach, others began to question it for its substance and whether or not a president should align themselves with a celebrity like that. Now, despite any mixed public reception that they may have gotten for aligning themselves with brat, the Harris campaign continued to fully dig their heels in and continue on with the movement, posting various different edits of Harris walking confidently with music from the album, creating different forms of merch that tied Harris to the iconic brat green, as well as using Charli XCX's cosign to show that Harris is culturally relevant, as well as not being afraid of any messiness or emotions. While some people may think that Brat Summer was ruined the moment a major brand like Harris adopted it, there is a difference between the way Harris obtained the Brat identity in comparison to a brand adopting a random internet meme. And the reason as to why Harris's adoption of Brat was more natural is due to the fact that it was naturally thrust upon her through Charli XCX's tweet, "Kamala is Brat," on top of gay stan Twitter constantly pushing out different memes of Harris and the Brat album, as well as Kamala just being naturally funny. With her quirky sayings like,
"Big Sister General,"
and
"I love good news, love,"
on top of her just having a really hearty laugh, the jokes began to write themselves because her humor came natural to her and it was very apparent to the public. With the newfound spark that the Democratic Party was able to obtain through Harris and her adoption of the Brat album, there was a very clear shift in momentum within this race, and conservatives knew this. Because of this, it became clear that the determiner of this race was going to be determined by the media, as well as who can more effectively communicate with the ordinary people. And this is big because politics in America, it is a spectacle, and you do have to reach out and be able to connect to the ordinary people. And the last time the Democratic had that was all the way back in the Obama era. And the end of the Obama era would really signify a period of forgettability that the Democratic Party would have to suffer through due to the fact that their following candidates, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, had a very, very, very hard time with connecting not only to the ordinary people, but to younger generations as well. With Clinton's email scandals on top of her feeble attempts at connecting to younger audiences like,
"But I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls,"
as well as Biden's clear decrease in cognitive abilities in comparison to his time as VP under Obama, it became almost painful watching the Democratic Party fight against the populist Trump, who had garnered so many followers by adhering to the white working class and to promise to fight against a rigged political system. And if this notion wasn't confirmed before, it would be confirmed just a week before his eventual resignation, as on July 13th, 2024, in Butler, Pennsylvania, Trump would survive an assassination attempt that would pretty much confirm the lead that the right had in this race. While many other presidents have had assassination attempts that have brought them no gain, the difference between Trump's and others is that Trump played his in a really, really smart way. Sustaining an injury to the upper right ear, Trump would pridefully rise from behind his podium, sticking his fist up in the air and walking off the stage under his own strength. Being captured perfectly on film, a staunch image of Trump's reclamation of his power would sweep through the internet, letting the left know that as long as Joe Biden is your candidate, you will be heading for an inevitable loss. It is because of these two stark differences between the Conservative and the Democratic Party at this time that makes Harris's run for presidency so especially important, because the political spectacle that she was able to create finally negated the forgetfulness and the disillusionment that the Democratic Party has been suffering already for years. After already having to deal with Clinton's loss in 2016, on top of witnessing Biden's slow decline during his 2020 term, when he announced that he would be running again in 2024, it almost felt like a slap in the face and that we were just handing the win to the Conservative Party. So by the time Kamala Harris is finally able to enter the scene, it is like the sun is shining after years of darkness and rain, not just because her physical and mental attributes make her more of a robust candidate to counter Trump, but also that she is more culturally attuned to younger generations that have been frequently ignored by older candidates. This is why Harris's collaboration with Charli XCX's Brat is actually really, really smart, because it brings Gen Z, a generation where most of us are able to vote now, back into the limelight. A generation who has also grown up in the 2008 recession, the COVID pandemic, and also a housing crisis. So now that we are able to actually participate and be seen in politics, we have the motivation to vote and we have the motivation to hear our political candidates out, unlike how we were before. It is through Gen Z's revitalization of political participation, on top of Kamala Harris's memification through the Brat album, where Project Coconut and its inception come into play. Being born from Kamala Harris's famous coconut tree meme.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
Project Coconut is used as a direct rebuttal to Project 2025 and the policies that MAGA has laid out within it. Meant to promote positivity and resilience in the face of hatred and division, Gen Z's Project Coconut communicates to MAGA and conservatives alike that we refuse to go back to a version of our country that purposely divides us for the sole purpose of fueling the needs of the rich while simultaneously taking everything away from the poor. While Kamala Harris was able to make waves that no other president was able to do before, Biden's late dismissal from the race left Kamala with less than half of the race to be able to amass all of the attention of America, leading to her losing the election to the already established brand of now President Donald J. Trump. The Brat movement and the words of Kamala Harris continue to reign on as we continue to fight on. Even though the road has gotten a lot bumpier since the election and obstacles are consistently put in our way, we remember that the messiness and the imperfections of our lives is what gives us strength, and that in order to bring the change that is necessary, we must be just a little bit bratty. Alright everybody, thank you so much for following along with me today. Before I go, I just want to remind you that it is so important to be an active political participant within this society and to get out and vote whenever you have the opportunity to, because your voice truly does matter. Love you guys.